Today I'm going to talk about adoption in the Philippines. Now, it's only adoption in the Philippines. You can adopt from the Philippines outside the Philippines, but let's turn around and talk about adoption. Now, there are 3 stages or 3 areas of adoption in the Philippines.
Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some good, some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you want to be. Step 4,
adoption in the Philippines. One is through DSWD, which is Department Social Welfare Development, and they have an office in every city, in every town in the Philippines. But their adoption part of the DSWD is based in Baguio, and it's got a different heading. It's called something like National Children Safety Council or something. So if you go through the DSWD to adopt a child, you'll follow a certain steps that are regimented, and they've been regimented since the 1950s. And the reason they've set up this new department, which is based in Baguio, and they did that in 2022 January, was it was taking too long to adopt children or find children that were no longer wanted, or that were needed guidance, needed help, needed support, needed welfare, needed a family, needed all of that stuff to turn around and develop them and move them forward. So this new department was based in Baguio, was set up to turn around and do that. Now, we're talking about the point number 1 at the moment, or item number 1. So DSWD, you can apply, and you go down to the department, you have an interview, and they identify the criteria that they will follow, and it's something like this. You're interviewed, they do a background check, you supply your birth certificate, your marriage certificate, your residency permit, your police clearance record, your bank account details, your address, police record from the country you came from, and you've got to be a resident for 3 years in the Philippines before you can go and adopt. Now, once you've turned around and gone through that interview process to start with, then you can file a petition to adopt. When you file that petition, there is a process that is, you file, they check, you refile again for another the next step or the next stage of adoption, and there are 18 to 20 steps depending how many times they would like to recheck or check your background. But things like they will come to your house and they will turn around and do a homestay. They will actually stay at your house to make sure that you're not something like an undesirable. They will turn around and they will check your family history. They will check you're single, you've got the finances, you've got the resource, and you go that whole route of checking, double checking, before you turn around and get to seeing an adopted child. Now, you don't have a choice through DSWD. They will assign you the candidate that best suits you. So you've got the psychometric testing, you've got take care, bye bye. They will turn around and assign you a child. Now, some people will turn around and say they would like to turn around and have a young child. Some people would like a child that's 5 or 6 years old or whatever. But you turn around and you can apply for adoption. Once you've done all the checks, it takes around 2 years. This is why I was saying this new department is being set up, because it can take up to 3 years depending on the checks and making sure that you are a healthy individual. You are not here doing anything illegal. You are going to give the child a good, stable background. Price for this service from DSWD is approximately $30,000, okay, in the Philippines. If you would like to turn around and look at it from outside the Philippines, it doesn't include airfares, hotels, food, or anything like that. If you're going to send the child, want the child to be adopted in America, but you have to do the adoption here in the Philippines. Now, there are a lot of children in the Philippines that are up for adoption, and the DSWD is the safest and the preferred option. Okay, it is a long process. It takes time. Okay, and you need to make sure it's what you want to turn around and do. Okay, now route 2 is that you go to a foundation or an agent or an adoption, how can I turn around and say it? An adoption agency, shall we say, and they will turn around and they will have a list of children that up to the age of 16 that are on their books that you can adopt. Now, the process is a little bit simpler with an agency, and there is one that's called Kasabian Agency, and that sits within the top 3 agencies in the Philippines for adoption. What you turn around and do is you start the same process as you do with the SWD. However, you pay each step incremental as it's completed, and at the end of that step, end of that process, you will have the adoption. Now, with DSWD, the process is looked at fairness for the family, fairness for the child, and fairness for the adoption person or couple. So there are 3 areas that they maintain strict control over, making sure that all 3 parties are suitable and they are all in agreement and they are all happy about what is happening in that process. On the agencies, they're not so detailed as DSWD. They would like to turn around and find a good home. They go through the same processes as the DSWD. However, at the end of it, you have to apply through the courts for the adoption papers, where DSWD will automatically do all of that for you, using your birth certificate, using the child's birth certificate, using the parental birth certificate. There is a contract that is signed. With the agencies, the detail is similar, but not as thorough, and that's maybe why it takes so long for DSWD to adopt it, maybe why the price is quite high. With the agencies, you can turn around and say a homestay is around 5,000 peso. When you turn around and do a police check, it's about 1,500 peso. Everything is broken down incrementally into different slots. You don't have to file a petition, you go through the same process. When you turn around and do process 1, it takes you to process 2, takes you to process 3. DSDW, you need to turn around and put in a petition filing under those steps, and that gives you your legal documentation. On the agencies, it's a little bit more fluid and a little bit easier, and it's recommended, but it's not recommended as highly as the DSWD, because that adoption process is the cream of the cream. Now, the third option is an option that is quite, I find it quite difficult to understand, but it happens. So you end up having a child that is adopted or is not wanted, They don't go to an orphanage, they don't go to an agency, they don't go into government care, they don't go to anywhere else. What actually happens is a relative or a family member will turn around and say, well, you're struggling to look after that child. We know somebody that will look after that child for you. And the mother and the father of the child, or the mother of the child, will then turn around and pass that child to a relative or a fourth amendment relative, a part of their family that happens a lot here. It happens a lot, but it's open that there are no checks. What you do is as a person is you take on that child. You give it a good house, you give it a good home, you give it a good education, you give it a good welfare, you develop that child and you bring that child on, but it's never yours. It's always the birth mothers and the birth fathers. And all they've done is they've loaned it out. And that's all I can really say. It's a loan of a child that you develop. However, most of these loans last indefinite because the family move, the adoption family move, and they take the adopted child, and the contact addresses get lost, the telephone numbers get lost. Somebody who arranged it might pass away, so the contact chain of legal documentation breaks down. And what happens is then in 10-15 years time, the people that have taken that child on will have filed through the courts to change the child's name to their name, so they get another birth certificate with another name on it. It doesn't go back and change the parent's name, it just turns around and changes put the child's name to the family name, which then muddies the water a little bit. It's open to abuse, especially for trafficking children, or doing stuff that's illegal. And it's not recommended to go down that route. There are a lot of people that think they're doing good, but it's a process that becomes very, very convoluted. It becomes very, very messy. But if you want to travel, you need to get a passport. You don't have all the details. You don't have all the all that written details, all that legal documentation that's required to turn around and show that child is yours. So it becomes a bit of a how can I turn around and say, it becomes a little bit of a mukbang or a boodle fight on a table about a child. So there are three processes. The first one is the DWSD, and they have an official adoption process. It takes a little bit of time. You can adopt. You can adopt as a foreigner. You don't need to be a Filipino. You will go through the same processes the Philippine family go through if you're a foreigner wanting to adopt a Filipino. The second option is through an agency, or it's a foundation, or it's an orphanage. You make that application, they start the process, and all it is about assigning the name across to you, them doing the checks on your house to say that they've actually checked on you, they've checked on your house, they've checked on your financial being, they know that you've got money, you can support what your goals are for that child regarding education, development, everything that families should be. And then the third option is an option where the child is passed across to another part of the family that can afford, or that may be able to look after that child and develop that child and go down that route. Oh, it's a bit cold in here. And that's an option that is out there, and it's an option that's used a lot. But adopting in the Philippines, yes, it can be done. Is it an easy process? Process parts 1 and 2, DSDW and a foundation or an orphanage or an agency, it's a bit long-winded, but it's for the benefit of the adoption family, for the parental family, and for the child, and for the government to know what's going on. So today it's something that's a little bit off the beaten track with my vlog. It's about adoption, and maybe one day I'll think about it. Maybe one day I'll look at it with Annie and see how the process works and look at adopting a child. But age is against me. I don't want to be running around at 70 years old with a 5-year-old in the garden. I could trip over, smack my head and put myself in hospital. So let's see what happens, shall we? But that's today's adoption. Like, share, subscribe. I'm having my ice blended mocha.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. 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 Wake up, today's gonna be a good day.